It's Thursday, May the 26th. Lake level's 921 and a half. It actually came down about 4.5 feet from the fishing report last week, but it started going back up again yesterday. It's gone up about a foot since yesterday, and it'll probably continue to come up for another day or so. Looks like the rain's supposed to stop today, and we're going to have 5 or 6 days of sunshine. But water temperature, it's actually came down a little bit too. It's, mid 60s to high 60s, depends where you're at on the lake. But it was a little bit higher, at the end of last week. But we've had several cool nights. I think it's supposed to be cool again tonight. But the past 7 days, other than we've had one tough day out of 7. The fishing's been, phenomenal. It's been really good, especially when you get this cloud cover and rain. I know a lot of people don't like fishing in it, but when you get days like that in May with post-spawn fish, the topwater bite can be awesome. And it's just not on the topwater. There's a lot of different ways I'm catching them, but I've been kind of all over the lake catching some really good quality smallmouths down there by the dam in the clear water. And what I'm doing down there, I'm going into a lot of the pockets and points. I'm looking for the gravel pockets where I feel the fish were spawning. I'm starting at the points of them pockets and working in. Some of them, it's kind of changes day to day. The whole key is finding the pocket with the shad in it and where the shad are. Some days they're out in front of the deeper docks. The fish are suspended out there over 25, 30 feet. Some days keep the boat in about 10, 12 feet of water. Especially early in the morning. There's been a lot of them in that buckbrush you can catch on top, some big smallmouths. And there's several different ways. I mean, a lot of times you might go an hour or two without a bite, but you can slow down in them same areas and catch them on a Ned rig or split shot or even like a green pumpkin tube. But the topwater baits I've been throwing, it's kind of a mixture. I'm throwing it's like a Berkeley surge shad or, jointed redfin, walking bait. This is a Spro E-Pop 80, a popper. Is a Strike King popper. There's a lot of different baits that are working, and I'm also throwing a buzz bait. Black buzz bait's kind of hard to beat, and a frog too. It's like this is a Spro frog, not a Spro frog, but a big bite, similar to like a horny toad. And I'm kind of letting the fish tell me what they want. A lot of days, they might come up and slap at the buzz bait or the frog, and they want, telling me, or at least I think they are, that they want something a little slower, and that's where I find the walking bait or the popping bait works a lot better, especially if you're fishing in the shallow bushes and in the shoreline grass. There's fish up there, but a lot of times it's hard to get a walking bait through it because there's quite a bit of trash and stuff up there. And that's, but if I get a strike on the buzz bait or the frog and the fish doesn't hook up, then I'll try to throw the popper or walking bait, through that same type structure. Another bait you can try in there too is a popping frog. Well, this one's still full of water, but it's a Spro, and instead of walking it, I can pop it, so I can got the best of both worlds in around that grass and brush. It's got the hooks where it's weedless, so it doesn't get hung up. A lot of the open water fish, the fish out in front of the docks, they seem like they want a little wake bait. Doesn't really matter what kind. If I've got a little wind or chop, then the walking bait or the popper or a spitting bait, is working better out there around that deeper structure. But I've also been able to catch fish flipping, a lot of fish flipping. Talked last week about as they pull the water down, some of them fish that were so scattered back in there behind the brush, they're getting out there where it's a little bit easier to pinpoint where they are. And you can throw several different baits. You can throw a jig or Texas rig bait. I seem to be doing a little bit better on creature baits. And this is, I'm throwing a 5/16 ounce weight. This is a big bite. It's called Vegas Flash is the color of Fighting Frog. But like Reaction Renovations Beaver or Strike King Structure Bug will work. Also, I'm throwing a full-size brush hog. You know, watermelon red, green pumpkin, dipping the tail in a little bit of chartreuse. I'm catching a little bit bigger fish on the bigger bait when I can get bites on it. And I wish I could tell you exactly which bushes or trees you need to fish. Every day it's a little bit different. A lot of times you got to get right down in the center of the buckbrush, and what I'm doing, you know, I try to pitch in there, and you want the bait to fall down there. I'm trying to key on the bushes that got, say, like 4 to 6 foot of water in them, and I'll feed a little bit of line, get the bait to the bottom, pump it once or twice. And a lot of times the bite's pretty hard to feel because your weight's bouncing off a branch, but anything you're not sure about, just jerk, and you're going to need pretty heavy line, because usually by the time you feel the fish, he's already got your bait swimming with it. So it can be, we've had to go in and get several of them, you know, reaching clear up to my shoulder to get down in the bush to get the fish out of this. So they're getting themselves buried up in there. But, you know, you might find some on a point, some will be on a willow tree, some will be in a buckbrush. Like I say, every day it's a little bit different, and everything looks so good. But usually in that particular day, once you get a couple bites, whether it's off the buckbrush or hardwood tree or willow tree, then you kind of run that pattern a little bit and not flip everything that's inside. And it's been working for me down there in the Clearwater. I think yesterday I was down at the dam, and it worked in the gin clear water, you know, flipping. A lot of times I could see the bottom of the bush, and 4 or 5 foot of water, flip the bait in there. All of a sudden you'd see a flash, you know, bait would pick it up. But you can also get outside of them bushes, and like I say, you can dragon Ned rig. I've been throwing a couple of 5-fish ultimate shaky heads. This one, if I'm fishing offshore structure, it's got a 6/0 hook. But if I'm fishing a little bit lighter line, we've got one that's this one particular one here is a 1/2 ounce. It's got a 5/0 fine wire hook, and I'm using a Cinco style bait. This is a salty super stick or something by Bite. I get the names mixed up, but it's a Cinco type bait. Watermelon red seems to be working real good. Now my best bite by far over everything has been, the fish are really getting on the structure. If you've got a little bit of stained water, but they're getting out there in that, you know, 15 to 25 foot range. And I'm catching a few on a Carolina rig and a football jig, but probably the #1 baits I've been catching them on have been deep diving crankbaits, like a Strike King 6XD. This a spro bait I've been playing with. It's a Russ Lane Fat Papa. Yeah, this one, the crawdad pattern, has been working better for me down in the clear water, but if I've got some off cold water, 6XD and like a citrus shad or chartreuse sexy shads, been working real well. And even some of the fish out there, I'm finding I don't have to be grinding bottom with that big crankbait. If I see fish out there in that 15, 18 foot and it's 25 foot deep, I get the crankbait down as deep as I can get it, and then just retrieve the bait real slow. And also in them same areas, you can pick up a swim bait like a 3.3, or even try a little bit bigger one with a 1/2 ounce head, getting down to those fish and swimming it. But you know, I love to throw a crankbait, especially a deep diving crankbait. So I've probably been sticking more with that and catching a lot of fish on it. Some of them are coming, it's kind of like what we call ledges. A lot of times you'll be setting in 35 or 40 foot on a bluff end on a long point that runs out, where you can cast to about 10 to 12 feet, and you'll grind it down on the top of that point. Then when it drops off that ledge and you lose contact with bottom, that's where a lot of my bites have been coming from. Not so much when the bait's been banging the bottom, it's when it leaves the bottom and comes off of that drop. Then fish seem to be suspended in them areas, and you know, they're generating a lot of water, a lot of current. So a lot of times I'm finding them fish are on the downstream side of these breaks. If I can find a break where it's got a drop off, like I would say on the dam side of the point, it seems like that the fish are laying underneath that with that water flow coming over the top of them. But there's a lot of different ways to catch fish. It's going to be, probably a little busy out there this weekend. So, get out there early. The topwater bite's been phenomenal. So, till next week, good luck, good fishing.